5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen and in-betweeners, on this week's On the Rocks Live from Home edition, set your phases to stunning as I chat with actor, writer, and producer Mary Chieffo from Star Trek Discovery, making Klingons sexy again. And me, your favorite host with the sassy most, making Klingons tipsy again. Raise the glass and let the drinks begin.
Thank you for being
Boulevard.
Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death.
I'd like to propose a toast.
This is On the Rocks with Alexander, where I drink with your favorite celebrities as we talk about fashion, entertainment, pop culture, reality TV, and, well, that's about it. So pop a cork, lean back, and raise a glass to On the Rocks.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Buttons and bows and pantyhose, On the Rocks podcast, the place where we're too glam to give a damn. So I am now convinced that when I die, Oompa Loompas will come out and they're going to sing about what a brat I was. Well, that's my fantasy. At least I'm going to put it in my will, so be prepared. Today's show is brought to you by Drag4.fans, the award-winning site connecting drag queens with their fans. You can sign up for free at drag4.fans.com. Kurt, do you have a pun for us today? You're so punny.
I always have a pun for you.
Okay, make it snappy. We got famous people here.
What does a Klingon dog say?
Brr.
Worf.
Oh my God. That's so bad, Kurt. That is awful.
Of course it is.
Oh God, I'm so embarrassed of the Star Trek universe. Thank you for that, Kurt. But speaking of the Star Trek universe, in keeping with our Star Trek theme this week, a happy birthday to Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov in the original Star Trek series. He stopped by On the Rocks a year or so ago to give us some behind-the-scenes stories, and he was loose-lipped, by the way. He shared plenty of stories. Sorry, William Shatner. Anyway, this show is presented by Straw Hat Media. You can watch it or listen to our over 225 episodes at ontherocksradioshow.com. Perfect for binge watching during quarantine. Hello to our listeners around the nation on every major podcast platform, including iHeartRadio and Pandora, Gay Binge TV, and on the Facebook pages of Now Trending, GED Magazine, I Love Gay LGBT, and of course, on the Rocks Radio Show's Facebook page. We are streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire TV at outat.tv. Also, we're on HereTV.com and YouTube's Planet Out channel. Coming soon to Apple TV, I found out today. So add and subscribe to us on your favorite platform. Like us on Twitter and Instagram at On The Rocks On Air. Send me an email. Book me for a wedding, funeral, quinceañera, bris. I don't care. I will zoom in and show up. Info at ontherocksradioshow.com. Send us your questions, comments, and your drink recipes or news. Okay, let me get to the woman of the hour. I am so excited, by the way. Mary Chieffo is known internationally as the Klingon commander turned Chancellor L'Rell on the award-winning CBS All-Access series Star Trek Discovery. When she isn't covered in prosthetics and speaking Klingon, she is thrilled to be producing, writing, and starring in Iago in Operation Othello, a feminist, gender, and color-conscious virtual reality adaptation of Shakespeare's Othello, alongside my girl Viola Davis and Julius Tennant's Juvie Productions. We're going to talk all about that. She received her BFA in Juilliard, by the way, Miss Fancy Pants, flourishing in her passion for classic text and reveling in the opportunity to take on strong female and male roles in Shakespeare canon, including King Lear, Queen Elizabeth, and the title role in Erica Schmidt's all-female Macbeth. I can say that because I'm not near a stage. And for her exceptional work, she was presented by Juilliard with the prestigious Elizabeth Smith Voice and Speech Prize and the St. Denis Prize for Outstanding Achievement and Leadership in Drama. I couldn't even get like a good attendance award. In this last spring, she developed and directed Closed Circuit, a new play premiering at the NYC Frigid Festival, and will be seen in Peter Flaherty's Empire at Sea, an augmented reality project produced by Intel. She's also set to star in Laurie Jones's upcoming independent feature, The Feelers, of which Mary also serves as creative producer, Miss Producer Pants. And for the fall, for this coming fall, actually right around the corner, she is co-producing Heartbeats, which, get this, is an entirely improvised medical drama streaming live every Friday night on the Ripley Improv Twitch channel. She will guest star in the premiere episode on September 25th and host a talkback for every episode after that. And of course, above all, I mean, a fan of all of this, but above all, who can forget her performance as a sleeping girl in Sandra Bullock's film, Making Sandwiches, at the age of 3. Please welcome Mary Chieffo!
Oh my goodness.
You get
Wow.
You know, when we think about the scope of work that you've done, you've been on the scene for, a relatively short amount of years for all of these different projects that you've been working on. Now, I know you started young, but I mean, that's quite a canon to yourself. I mean, I know you're trying to catch up with your parents probably, but that's a lot of work for such a youngin'.
Thank you. It really is. It's one of those things where I'm a very like one foot in front of the other, what inspires me. But when I hear it all kind of laid out, I do kind of get to sit back and be like, you know what, Mary, I think you're okay. Like you've done some things. You're allowed to take a break every once in a while.
And there's so many exciting things that you're doing, such as playing with that feminine and masculine theme on film that we're going to talk about. Also, technology in media, which is so exciting, and of course, Star Trek. Now we've seen present day Mary in your interviews, the Comic-Con events, social media. You interact a lot with your fans. You are a Shakespearean lover, a feminist, a geek, activist. But what kind of kid were you growing up? I mean, you literally grew up in an actor's studio or home with both your parents in the business. Were you like a real nerd or a class clown, cheerleader, quiet girl? Like, what was going on?
I was definitely a self-proclaimed geek. I'm proud of it. In fact, I love you. We just showed one of the Comic-Con panel photos where I got to be on a panel in Hall H for the show. And I spoke on that panel that was a lifelong dream. I grew up going to San Diego Comic-Con with my best friend Eve. And sometimes her parents are visual artists, graphic artists, and so we would go to Artist Alley. And there were a few times my mom was there for promotional things. And so I just grew up aspiring to be a part of a project that would lead me there. And while I didn't grow up with Trek per se, I loved sci-fi, fantasy. I leaned a little more on the fantasy side as a kid. Narnia and all that good stuff. But something that my dad, whose birthday it is actually today.
I saw that. Happy birthday, Mr. Chieffo.
Yeah, happy birthday, Papa Chief. But he's the real, the one that indoctrinated me into the sci-fi realm. We went to see actually the 2009 reboot of Star Trek. We went to see that, and that was actually my first real intro.
Yeah.
And then he was the one that was like, okay, well, let's go back. If you like these characters, let's look at the original series. Let's look at the original movies. And then I'm sure we'll talk about more how I got more and more into Trek. But those were kind of, I was kind of naturally a theater kid. In elementary school, I talk about how because both of my parents were actors, I really did not realize there was any other option, and not in like, oh man, I'm going to have to grow up to become an actor. I just thought that people pretended to be everything that they were. And then like, if I really get down to it, I would think that my friends' parents who were lawyers or doctors or whatever were dressing up like that, like my parents would for an audition, and then they would be the actor parents. So once that shift happened, also I did want to be a spy. And then I realized playing a spy was a lot less dangerous. And that was kind of the shift. I got into a great performing arts middle school, Milliken Middle School, right here in the Valley. Got into their musical theater program. And that's when I became a full-fledged musical theater geek, singing in the halls. I saw Wicked. It changed my life. Yeah. And I would say, I like that you were listing all the different kind of archetypes I could have been. And I feel that my actor transformative self kind of wanted to be all of them whenever I so pleased. And that's what led me to staying with theater, is like, if I can't be all of them at once, then let me find a way to just keep creating new ways to be that.
Well, and your career really has blended everything. We're going to talk about the Othello project, being futuristic, and what the work you've done on Star Trek. And for the Star Trek fans, we will be talking about Trek, so hold your impulse power there a little bit. So you never really had to like come out as like, I'm going to be an actor, parents, and they never were like, you know what, you should just wait until until you're an adult, which some entertainment business parents will do. They'll make their kids wait, but that didn't happen.
Not really. I mean, to my parents' credit, they very much they wanted to support me finding my own way. They certainly didn't force me into it, but again, I'm so grateful. They filled my childhood with lots of creativity and but I played a lot of soccer. I was all-star goalie. I helped with the Klingon stuff later on. And I was into modern dance. I did that for a long time. I got super into art history in high school. There were a lot of things that, as is evident in how I've continued, as you've said, to create my creative space. But the thing I said I was willing to suffer the most for always came back to acting, whether it be just the emotional unpacking that I had to do, or, as I'm more witness to these days, just the strain of this industry and trying to find your place in it. But I think because I had an eye, particularly my parents being incredible, working, thriving character actors who had, made their livelihoods out of this profession, but we're working in the industry. We're not like, oh, they're just off in a mansion in Hollywood, right, or whatever it is. We were in a creative space, and my childhood was filled with creative people and LA theater, and they both came of age in New York. My dad's from Long Island. So I spent time in New York growing up. I had those worlds around me always. So I think I never was caught up in the fantasy of I just want people to look at me, although that is totally part of it, I'm sure. I am an only child. So I'm not going to, yeah. Okay, we got a lot to talk about.
We get it.
Yeah, so I'm not to say that isn't a part of it, but I think it made me learn that my focus really wanted to be on the craft. And Josh Adele, who was my high school drama teacher, who I always like to acknowledge, because he really gave me the tools to create my own craft that really then primed me for my Juilliard education. And he did a lot of Strasberg and relaxation exercises and really treated us like adults. And so I've just been very blessed with all the mentors throughout my time, just up until now.
Well, and what I love is that you did cut your teeth on getting your education. You went to like the Shakespearean youth, theater camp. It's not like you were just placed because of your parents in the business. You weren't just playing roles. You really kind of had to learn for yourself what acting meant to you. You had to cut your teeth playing roles of all kinds, and so you really did that work. And for our viewers who don't know, Mary's parents are Beth Grant, one of my favorite actresses of all time.
Mine too.
And of course, Michael Chieffo, some of the most prolific pairs of actors ever. When you look at their body of work, I mean, it's astounding. That's why I said, are you trying to catch up?
Yeah.
Because they have literally played in every type of genre, by the way.
Yes.
In every type of medium. And so well, by the way, the way that they encapsulate characters, no matter what, if it's like in a realistic setting or, there's like a chemistry and there's a sincerity to their performance, which I definitely saw traits of in Discovery for you. Now, were you always aware of them being in the business and working? Did it come with any pressure, or that when you were doing your early roles that you were seeing their work and there was that pressure of like, pleasing the parents but still being a good actor on your own?
Yeah, I think it more manifested in, I definitely have a few distinct memories of auditioning for middle school and high school productions and wanting their help, particularly my mom's. Like that was where I think the tension might come in, is like, I'd be like, can you help me? And then suddenly my, reflex is to say, no, Mom, don't tell me what to do. But I'm like, but I want your advice. But also, so it was a lot of kind of weird cognitive stuff there. But also, I'm remembering too with my dad for college auditions, one of my classical monologues was Antigone, her speech in front of the court, really being like, I married my brother, all that good stuff. And I remember actually this, where I am right now, was the garage of my childhood home that we converted into a living space a few years ago. So in this exact space at the time, it's very theatrical. Yeah,
it is. I was just saying, it's like a set to me.
Yeah, I like to say I'm on brand. It really is. Every time I enter a Zoom now, people are like, oh, and I'm like, yep, this is me. Yep. But in this very space, before it was a living space, I was working on my monologues in here. And I remember I asked for his help, and he was Creon for me, and he blew out his voice. This is just coming back to me, but he was like, really went for it. And And that is, again, as you so beautifully noted about my parents, is they go hard or go home, and care deeply about what they do. And so it's mainly been, intense but comical moments in that regard. I will say overall, I think the reason why I'm such a hard worker, one of them is that I do recognize, oh, there goes my hair. I do recognize my privilege in every respect, whether it be growing up in LA, having parents that are in the industry, and just the opportunities that has afforded me. So out of respect for what I have been given, I want to work my butt off, and I want to give the world art that is, it changes lives and can affect people and inspire people, or whatever people need in this moment, or just give relief. That's, part of the gift of art as well. And I think I was always aware of that. But as the years have gone by, I have come to realize that more and more, that it is, and not, of course, there are moments where I think I'm like, oh gosh, like, is this, I'm unpacking it in therapy for sure. But I think there's an element of genuine, there's a reason I'm here. There's a reason that my soul is here in this body and this time and space with these people and these opportunities. And I've had too many instances in my life where I've made choices to be of service. I call it serendipity highway.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good. Once I plant it, I've got all my friends saying it now too. But I do really believe in that, in following your gut, but also just following service. And that has led me, when we talk about Othello, like the ways in which I came to most of the projects that you just mentioned that I'm working on came out of a seed of me being like, I'm here to do the work, or like, this is an amazing opportunity to bring storytelling to a community that needs it. And then that led to me, falling in love with the piece, or meeting other people that were passionate about certain types of storytelling. So certainly at this point, when I can look back and listen to that bio and be like, what a gift that I have been able to genuinely collaborate with people who are trying to make a difference with their art.
Well, and so important, during COVID, we've seen the art industry has literally saved people at home alone, whether they're watching Netflix, whether they're listening to podcasts, or they're listening to new albums by artists. The artist industry has, I think, really saved people's sanity during this. And we see how important art is in every single form, even from Zoom script readings, to web series, to PBS. And so we see how important it is, and we see, how funding in schools usually goes to the sports programs. But we look at the industry that has really kind of carried us through this right now.
Yeah.
It's like,
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so Shakespeare Youth Camp, I didn't even know that was a thing. When I studied Shakespeare, we had to memorize a sonnet, and then we watched Leonardo DiCaprio and Romeo and Juliet, and that was it. Right? What business do kids have learning Shakespeare? It's all about sex, murder, and tights.
Yeah, I know. Oh yeah, and that was my first bout at Iago, that image.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. But yeah, so my friend Eve, who I mentioned earlier, she had been going for many years to Theatricum Botanicum, which is, this lovely in Topanga magical outdoor theater where they have, a great season every year. But then, they have this summer camp. And I'm very lucky that she had been going for a while. I'd seen some of her shows. And then the summer between 7th and 8th grade, I decided I was going to go. And they were doing Antony and Cleopatra. And they split it up. And I was only Cleopatra 3. Only as in I only had the most intense part of her story. Only the part where she gets captured and then murders herself with an axe.
Perfect material for an 8th grader. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. It was destiny. But it is true. It's it definitely, I feel like that's the age where I feel it's a good time to start massaging it. I mean, if we look at the media that kids are consuming anyway, I think that's the gauge. As a parent or any sort of guardian, if you're looking at a kid, if you're exposing them to contemporary stuff that has certain material, then don't limit that to just contemporary material. Let them look at the Greeks. Let them look at Shakespeare. And I'm sure as we speak more to Klingon stuff, that's a huge aspect of the culture and a lot of the story that I ended up telling. And I find that it is intense, but as I said, I grew up with fantasy and these archetypes, and like I said with Narnia, I mean, that's very archetypal, and Aslan and all that stuff. And while I understood it to a certain degree growing up, certainly it's the type of story that gets better over time, or you comprehend it more and more as you get older. So I do agree, certain plots should not be explored at a certain age. But part of my whole passion about Shakespeare and this Othello project, and what I hope we can expand on from the seeds of that, is bringing that Shakespeare education to everyone. And, you know, and that's been a huge topic of conversation always, but particularly this year, about education and where we're putting it, and what we are categorizing as, you know, superior, inferior education, and what are we reading and why. And the hope with this Othello is bringing that contemporary sensation, which was exactly what he was doing at the time with the groundlings and everything. You know, it was, and I love Shakespeare in Love for that I think it encapsulates that feeling of, these are just a bunch of actors being like, we got to throw this together, guys. Like, he wasn't like, I am Shakespeare and I have written something very good. And, you know, that's definitely not, he's like, I can't think of anything. And, which I just love. And I think, I'm sure it was one of my many wonderful Juilliard teachers who said to us about, described how the language was new. It's old to us, but it was fresh. He was creating words. So when someone says unmake, they're the first person ever saying this word. And so to bring that level of excitement to a middle schooler, and for me, I feel that hearing and speaking Shakespeare out loud is the way to be introduced to it, because he didn't, as we see in Shakespeare in Love, and if you read historically, not just based on the movie, but he wrote it to be said. And I remember the first time I read Othello in high school, you know, we'd go home, read a few scenes or whatever, and have to take notes. And then you're constantly looking at, what does that word mean? And trying to, but when someone's saying it, you don't have to know every word, which is true with most TV shows we watch. And certainly when you look at things with technobabble or jargon, you're like, great, they know what they're great. I'm so glad they know what they're saying. And that's, I mean, so it's very similar to Shakespeare, but we have certain notions about it because of how we've traditionally taught it. So for me, I'm grateful that, that period of time was kind of perfect, because I was getting full throttle theater kid inclinations. And I did exactly what I hope a 7th to 8th grader would do, which is be like, oh, when I say these words, I feel powerful, you know, like, and they really did. I mean, it's no mistake that they gave me the Cleopatra 3, but I remember it's like all the stuff where she's, you know, sassing up so-and-so, and then they do capture, and just, I remember having to descend some stairs and the director being like, you've got a lot of strength. And I was like, yes, I do. Thank you very much.
I love that you said sassing up, by the way.
Yeah.
I have directed Shakespeare in theater, and I was, you know, I had to add my flair, and so I'm so glad that you did that. I'm like, you can sass up Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's it's so fun to do. And I found, you know, in different ways, like when I was working on Iago, there's so much humor in all of it. And I think finding that, and I think this is true, sometimes we can be this way, whether it's Shakespeare or any sort of drama, you know, we want to be, we got to take it seriously. But I go to drama to be, you know, affected deeply and intensely, but also you have to have that balance, or,
you do.
I mean, I don't know. That's certainly not what that's not what I go to watch. I don't want to be totally intense for that long.
Well, and you make a really good point, is that kids at, you know, the 7th and 8th grade level, they're seeing these themes, and they're seeing some pretty graphic stuff on TV. And so that is a really good point. It's like, well, let's bring some education and some theater flair to that, because they are experiencing that. Now, it has been said that every actor should have to do Shakespeare at some point. Mm-hmm. And we know a lot of the Star Trek actors have done Shakespeare, such as Patrick Stewart, became in super serious from doing Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But what about doing Shakespeare in your younger years has helped you make the switch and leap from theater to film work? What about the Shakespeare style of acting has helped you?
I love that question because I think I have a very particular one, having my first big TV theme be a Klingon. So it's kind of ideal as someone who clearly always comes in with a lot of energy, and I have worked a lot on how I channel that, and I know I can be very simple as well. But the fact that, if anything, with the prosthetic and the teeth and the language, I had to be giving full Shakespeare energy to all I was doing on the show, you know, and just in in movement and just general, you know, my theater training was integral to what I brought to that role, and knowing how to navigate text I didn't recognize, you know, that was very similar to tackling a Shakespeare soliloquy or monologue. But something more on the film side that I as I have continued to work more in human Mary film, but something I learned from Laurel was the eyes. And because for me, that was the biggest, they are the window to the soul always, but when initially I really could not move my mouth or my face, barely at all. And the eyes were the only thing I had. And when they lit them, and I think Olatunde Onsunsami, who directed the he directed the fourth episode, Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry, in the first season, and then Point of Light in the second season. Those are two of my big Klingon episodes. But particularly in that first episode, where we really get to know Laurel, he lit her in this way that we really got to see into her eyes. Yep. And I was lucky enough to see a few shots as we were filming and saw that that's what was really tracking. And so I learned, and when I'm in the jail cell as well, all of these moments where you're listening. And I had, you know, someone give me that great advice early on with just even auditions, that with film, it's almost more about the listening than the saying. And, you know, even the show like Trek that is so text heavy, we often are cutting to the person's reaction more than we're cutting to the person and what they're saying. And so with that in mind, I just made sure the moments where I wasn't speaking were deeply filled with my experience, which obviously you kind of have to be doing on stage as well. So it's about taking that level of like, I'm going to be committed fully all the time. I'm not going to show up and kind of be there. And I have found in the theater actors that I've worked with in film, which is the majority of the Trek cast that I worked with. It's a very, we have a very theater company energy, and Sonequa being the champion of that, of course. But I was lucky in that regard, and also in rehearsing outside of the day of filming. Again, I don't know because I haven't had as many other experiences outside of the Trek one yet. But I certainly found that it's about asking for what you need from your scene partner. And those are definitely skills that I picked up from doing a lot of theater and doing Shakespeare. But I do feel that that's the gift, is just not feeling like it's so different, but knowing that you're channeling your energy in a different way, but it should be the same energy of truthfulness and authenticity.
And also making it accessible to an audience that might not be familiar, like a Shakespeare. When you're showing, you know, as somebody, you know, who's young, a Shakespeare play for the first time, you have to be so realistic so that they understand what's going on. Like when you go see an opera without subtitles, you know, there has to be this undercurrent. And the same thing, Discovery is responsible for bringing in a whole new generation of Trek fans in its own story. And so it had to be accessible to a new audience, but it also had to please some of the OG. I'm a Star Trek OG. Yeah. And it had to really mesh that, even in styles of acting. Okay, so Miss Marty Pants, you were valedictorian for high school.
Yeah.
So you travel from SoCal, and I know that you kind of had time in New York, but moving to go to school at Juilliard with prestige, your dad went there. As valedictorian, you know, a big fish in SoCal, and then all of a sudden to this New York. What was that move like, and what did you have to get used to the most by living in the New York scene as a student?
I love all of that. It's definitely true. The valedictorian girl, she never quite goes away. And in my improv class on Saturday, we were joking about who asked the question about the assignment. Like I was like, well, I've learned I'm not always going to ask if everyone, And then of course they were like, well, what was it? And I was like, oh, and then I'm like, I had it written down. So I did, yeah. But hey, it serves me, and particularly with all this producing that I'm doing more and more of, the organization and checklists definitely help. But outside of that, I mean, I came in straight out of high school to Juilliard, and their program is a mixture of MFA, BFA, and actually our class was the last class before they implemented the full MFA program, which is neither here nor there really, because it's the same education. But so I came in being one of the younger ones. I was the youngest woman, and which was great for me, honestly, because high school was not terrible, but also like, it was high school, and I didn't really vibe with a lot of typical high school things. So to not be,
I totally get that. And that's kind of like, as the only child, we got along so well, I think, with our parents. That I don't know if this is the same for you. I had such a hard time connecting with kids my own age. I thought they were silly. I just never fit because I was used to this kind of more mature environment.
Yes.
So I was more comfortable with older adults than I was with my contemporaries at any time.
Absolutely. That I 100%. And I joke that I'm not good at gauging age on people, because I just I've had people be like, Gino, she's say whatever the age, and I don't know whether they're like think she looks older or younger. And I'm like, oh yeah, like wow, no idea, but I know how to have a shocked face, and I'm like, they'll think so that's definitely was a huge factor. I was lucky. I say my friend group is old souls, young spirits of all ages.
Yes.
Like, it's really that there's a certain sort of vivacity for life but there's like an ancient understanding of dark, profound things as well. But case in point, my class overall really was filled with just that, young, old souls and young spirits. And I was just grateful I didn't enter a whole like crazy replication of high school hierarchy stuff. And as a consequence, I really got to come into my own, quite literally, because I was away from home for the first time. And I did not learn to drive until after I graduated college. So I, at the time, didn't drive, having grown up in LA. So New York was like, I can walk anywhere.
Everywhere. Subway, everything.
Yeah. And so much autonomy. And while I did have, I'll do the shortest version of this story, but very early on, for the first years, they have a, what is it called? Just like getting to know the city sort of thing. And they have different events that you go to and stuff as a class. And we had one at the public library. And my whole class, we were all getting on the subway, and I missed, like, the door shut on my hand. And I remember, and I got my hand out hoping it would open again, but it just stayed shut. And I remember seeing all my classmates fade away in like a week of school. And I'm just like, so then, but it's fine. It's the one, it's pretty consistent. I get on the next train. I get off at 42nd Street, which is one of the most intense places to get off. And I could not find my way out because you keep following the exit signs. And if you don't know, like and there's no cell service, and I'm desperately trying to text or call somebody, the clock's running, the thing's going to start. I finally found my way out, and my best friend, still my best friend to this day, Justin Barnes, I was texting him, and he came and found me in front of the library, and I just burst into tears. And he was like, "It's okay, you're gonna be okay." I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay, thank you so much." So that I definitely had, a fair share of those New York moments as well. But I really did love that autonomy that I got in a way that I didn't have in LA. And it was, and I lived in the dorms and then worked in the dorms in res life. So I was very lucky. I was right there on 65th and Broadway for all 4 years. So I got to tromp around the Upper West Side and decompress and, just kind of explore as much as I could. I mean, our days are pretty, intense. 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. So you have like classes all day, then rehearsals in the evening, then rehearsals on Saturday. So you have Sunday off. And but I found there was kind of a shift in second to third year where I knew I wanted to just own who I was more. And
So insane. That's exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh yeah, this is not our last conversation.
Oh, no.
But it really is true. That shift really started happening. A phrase that I use a lot is theater went from being my escape to being my constant reality. And so I couldn't escape from myself, and I had to examine myself more and appreciate myself more, and also separate myself from my work. And the valedictorian, tying back to that girl certainly initially defined everything she did as her value. And I had a moment, I did King Lear, one of my male roles, in my second year. And this was really the shift. It was the end of the first semester of second year, Shakespeare slot. And there's a whole crazy, when I was cast, it was Hurricane Sandy was literally happening outside.
Oh, wow.
And we were all in the dorms and everything's shaking. And I'm like, I'm going to play King Lear. Great. Blow winds and crack your cheeks. And it's a very short rehearsal process, that particular slot, and you just kind of go in, guns blazing. I shared the role with, actually, this is a fun tidbit, and I know you showed a picture of me and Mary Wiseman, because she was in my class at Juilliard.
Yes! Small little fun fact.
Yeah, fun little fun fact. And even further fun fact is that her now husband, Noah, played the first half of King Lear. We were all in class together.
That is such a funny world.
Yeah, and he's 6'3" and I'm 6 feet, and that I feel like they were like, give the big people Lear, and but he did the first half, and it really allowed for an incredible feminist version of the piece, because it illuminated how this mother, a divine feminine energy, as I phrased it, was being suppressed. That part of Lear's madness and part of why he has been so mercurial at the beginning is because he is, denying a whole aspect of himself and taking it out on his family and his daughters. And so then I come in the second half, literally carrying a tree. It was a giant branch that had fallen because of Hurricane Sandy. And saying, ask thy daughter's blessing. And, we're in a rehearsal room, but we're using the flickering lights. And then we transfer. And then I did the second half with all the reconciliation and everything. And sounds fantastic, right? I was really in this place of like, I've been given this opportunity. I must do the best version of Lear that has ever been done. And I couldn't do that because that is impossible. And the first performance, or invited rehearsal, as we call it, it was the second years. We were second years, the first years, and the other half of my class that was in the other Shakespeare show. A bunch of my teachers. It was just people I wanted to impress. My parents were there. It was one of the first shows that they got to see me in.
That's some pressure right there.
Yeah. And we had one run the night before where I had like kind of really felt in the flow and discovered stuff. And so I was in that space of like that second run where you're like, I don't want to replicate, but I also don't know where I am.
Yeah.
And I did it. And it was, anyone who didn't know me, it was fine. But my brain was like, ah! And my parents know me quite well. And so when I met up with them afterwards, like, how did you feel? And I was like, well, and then my mom was like, well, I just want you to, like, you've got too many eyes on you. And it became this whole cathartic like thing that ultimately led to me kind of going, screw it. I have 2 more performances. I have 2 more goes at this. I'm not going to be concerned about who I'm going to impress. I'm not going to be concerned with if I said the words properly, if my is just right. I'm going to try and give this character the integrity that she deserves, and just give it my all. And I did feel a lot better about those last two goes. And now it's like, because I had that breakthrough, I was like, well, let's keep going now. I'm finding it.
Yeah.
And that's rehearsal, and that's the process. And actually something that Mary Wiseman said in our first year, and we have circle meetings every quarter to like talk and review. And one of the first things she said was, it's very vulnerable to be in process in front of other people. And that's the whole training program right there. And that's beyond that. That's all of us always. But that was the shift for me, was I had that experience and I realized, oh, wow, I felt that the next day I was going to walk down the hall and one of those first years wasn't going to like me anymore because I hadn't, I don't know, changed their life by playing Lear. And it's something I work on every day, and I always get caught up. I always want to affect people. I always want to give the best that I can, but I'm much more attuned to the fact that that's a goal. And actually our movement teacher, Moni Yakim, who they just did a great documentary on him, or just released it. And one of the exercises he has you do is you're like lifting up towards the ceiling, and he's like, reach, why aren't you touching the ceiling? And I would get so frustrated because I'm like, there's no way to touch the ceiling. Why do you keep saying that? And that's the point. That's the whole point of that class, is everything he asks you to do is not fully possible, but it's the striving for it that makes it interesting to watch. So I definitely get that intellectually, and I'm understanding it more and more emotionally and physically every day, I think.
Well, and I love that you shared that process, because second year for me, college, it was the same. I had all this still material from high school and who I was then, and it was still like, to be the best theater kid or whatever. And then I came to that kind of, I wasn't playing King Lear, I'll tell you that much. But there was that kind of break. It's like, I am my own person, and this is going to be the rest of my life. I didn't have anybody to coddle me and protect me, but also nobody to really want me to succeed in such like an intense way. I didn't have that safety net. It's like, this is, you are going to make it or not. And that's the year that I came out, and that's the year that I kind of developed my own style, my own voice, and stopped caring about trying to please. And then everything kind of fell into place there. I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah, I love that. Then thank you for sharing that. I love hearing that. Yeah. Okay,
we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, we are talking all things Trek and Othello. When we come back. Okay, and we're back. How did you find out about the Star Trek opportunity? How did it come to your awareness?
Well, again, serendipity highway. This is one of the prime examples of being of service and it leading to many exciting things. And that kind of tracks the whole Star Trek journey. But I'll do the Spark Notes version, which I've gotten better practice at. So, and it does kind of coincide with the Othello. These will overlap. But so I graduated 2015 from Juilliard. I came back to LA for the summer. And then actually Trezana Beverly, one of our directors, who had directed me in first year, called the school and said, "Who's that young lady who plays all the male Shakespeare roles?" And they were like, "Mary Chieffo?" And she was like, "Yes." And she was doing this production of Othello in the fall for Harlem Shakespeare Festival. And she wanted me, I initially auditioned for Iago and Cassio. And I got that audition. I got one or two other possible theater auditions that August. And an opportunity to do a workshop of a one-woman show about Carson McCullers that Suzanne Vega wrote. And just to read the script for her, because it was her piece that she was ultimately going to do. But from Rattlestick, David Van Asselt had seen me do a reading. He just knew I was capable to sing and be Southern and all that stuff. And so that brought me to New York in that August. We did this initial workshop. I auditioned for the Othello. I went back to LA. I ended up getting cast as Iago and went back to New York that fall. And more on that later with the Othello. But that was when the Carson McCullers train started going. And no, I can't quite remember. I think we workshopped it again also during that Othello time. But then that spring, we did a workshop in LA. And we did it right over here in North Hollywood. And now at the Sherry Theater.
And Duncan Sheik worked on that show too, right?
Yes. He and Suzanne co-wrote most of the songs.
Grammy Award winners, Tony Award winners. That's all.
I know it's a madness in the best way, and the songs are fantastic and totally a mixture of their two styles. Like some of them, I'm like half the time I'm here, half the time I'm there, and what was cool was Suzanne has a very different voice than I do, and I lean a little more on the Broadway sound, but with a bit of a, I don't know, something else. and I'm pretty malleable, and I tried to like pay homage to like what her style is, but make it my own. But regardless, I got to do a one-woman show, a 2-hour one-woman show, 2 acts, where I sing 10 plus songs, go through this incredible woman's life experience, both as a young woman and then near the end of her life. And so I invited everyone and their mother in LA. And I was lucky enough to invite Brian Fuller and his partner Scott Roberts, and who this bungalow I live in is called the Muffin Buffalo Bungalow because of Muffin Buffalo, which is the character Marianne Marie Beadle that my mom played both on Wonder Falls and Pushing Daisies.
Yeah.
Love
Pushing Daisies.
My favorite. And that was the thing. That show really got me through high school and college. That was the show that I would watch over and over again, and took me to a place. So all that being said, Brian saw me in that. He had known of my existence, but got to see me, post Juilliard, all this sort of stuff. It was around the time, he was involved initially with the show, and the stars aligned. CBS had seen my Juilliard showcase prior. They knew my work. They knew what I was capable of. I'm 6 feet tall. I have strong features. I have the language training, and I just feel very grateful that the stars aligned, that there was enough push and enough celebration of what I could probably do, that I was able to get booked for those first 2 episodes. This is where the Serendipity Highway continues on, because initially it was like, we need a prototype for this new design. You seem like a good prototype. You'll be the commander. It was, around the time my girl Gwendolyn Christie was Captain Phasma, and definitely in line with that. And then smash cut to, I've been cast. Brian is no longer with the show. Aaron and Gretchen, who Aaron's actual aunt is who Marianne Marie Beadle is based off of. They're now show running, and during that period of time when we started filming, continued wonderful Ted Sullivan was on set, saw me listening this whole scene where Takuvma's talking and I don't say a thing, but it was my close-up.
Yeah.
And I was apparently emoting, and it was very exciting, and there were just like little seeds like that, and there was enough going on that they knew who I was outside of my work. They knew that I was a hard worker. I've looked at my bio resume, all that sort of stuff. They gave me that episode 4, Butcher's Knife, and that was the shift. Then they were like, they knew they needed someone to come up with the master plan. And then, I just got the opportunity to be like, here I am. I'm speaking all this Klingon. This is what I can offer. And then that was when I was sat down and with the writers. I was back in LA for a point, and I was kind of given a sense of where the arc was headed for the rest of the season, and which is more or less what you see on the show. So I like telling that story because I think it's an important one for actors and all artists to hear, is that it didn't all come from just me, but it was that being present, showing up, doing the work, taking the opportunity that I was lucky enough to have because of all of these strange stars aligning, and then just giving it my all. And, around that time too, we were promoting the show simultaneously with filming it. And I went to that first Vegas before the show had come out, and I was interacting with fans. I stayed that full weekend. I got to know the fans, and because I am a genuine geek, you know, I was genuinely with everyone and celebrating everyone. And then I knew the Klingon stuff. I'm so grateful. Kristen Hall, who was head of publicity at the time, really used me so much during that first season and second season, just with promotional things. And it was all stuff that a lot of good people just showing up and seeing that I was about what I was about, and giving me that opportunity, and then me being grateful for it and trying to rise to it to the best of my ability. So that's kind of the first season into second season journey for me. And of course, you know, just falling in love with this character and being excited. In 8th grade, tying it back to Milliken, I was cast as the Baroness when I had auditioned for Maria in Sound of Music. And my mom was like, "So Mary, I can speak a little to this experience." And it was great. I loved playing that part. I got to look fabulous and bring vulnerability and something else to a character that could be one-dimensional and vilified. And I got hooked on that. And I got to do, you know, I see Laurel and I go, oh, there's a lot of stuff that people are going to disagree with or misunderstand because of her culture, because of her background. People tend to judge Klingons a lot on human standards, may I say.
Yes.
But you know, bringing that heart through the eyes and through whatever else. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Baroness Sound of Music, because in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, Christopher Plummer, Chancellor Gorkon, tells us that Shakespeare is actually of Klingon origin and uses quotes throughout the film. And in real life, Hamlet has been translated and performed in Klingon. By the way, it's an audiobook. You can get it.
Yes, yeah.
But, you know, the whole, I was talking to him earlier about the Shakespeare. Klingons embody that visceral blood and revenge of the Shakespeare world, but also the tragic hero complex, the pathos, and the grotesque kind of beauty of all these pieces. And I can't think of a more appropriate actress to play Laurel. And Everett Johnson from the Star Trek Facebook fan group wants to know how much, and you kind of touched on this, but how much was the character kind of set, and then how much of a hand have you had, especially from season 1 to season 2, with the writers on really molding the character around your own thoughts, your own research, because the research you did and the facts, but also some of the experimentation that you brought to the character, it's pretty extensive, and it's a lot more than a lot of actors, I think, especially in the Trek world, have brought to their characters. So how much hands-on did you have?
I feel it's such a it's a symbiotic relationship in many ways. I felt I did that research, I did all of that for me so I could know what I was riffing off of. Sounds, you know, a little trite, but like certainly vocally and physically, like what have they looked like in the past, even though most of the past Klingons we're looking at are further down the timeline than
isn't that weird?
So that was part of it too, was like, okay, so this is what they are 100 plus years from now. Like, what can I borrow from that? Where can we make her more, you know, I certainly with the dialect that I did develop and create with our dialect coach Rhea Nolan, based off of the Klingon sounds that are in the Klingon dictionary. But through that, I wanted there to be an element of, this is someone who's very proficient in English, but still has the vocal cords, like still is very much in her native tongue and those vibrations. And that is what accents are, is people that we all have them because we're all used to certain sounds. And then when we try and pronounce sounds that aren't in our normal vernacular, then the other people that are used to that sound ping it as, oh, that's a dialect. So I just wanted to explore that and let that be its own thing, but lead towards, oh, well, that is why Klingons ended up having the Shakespearean sound, because there is a vibration and a depth that comes from that more native sound. But in regards to plot and that sort of stuff, I have much hand. And I think, much like Serendipity Highway or Chicken Egg sort of situation, I did, when we were starting to do press, you know, I talked a lot about Grilka, who's one of my favorite Klingons. And her journey in her first episode is not being able to succeed at her husband's house. And that really struck me. And then, of course, she does end up getting it through, various sorts of loopholes. And that more or less, you could say, is Laurel's journey in the first season. It's more nuanced than that, but she does ultimately rise to power because of some strange shenanigans that go on near the end, and a detonator and all that. And the fact that she doesn't value herself, in her society, because that's what her society has told her to do. So I was definitely, speaking to that on panels, but I never call the writer's room as like, I really think this would be a great idea.
Well, and this is a theme, and this is what you've done with your career on stage and Discovery and the Othello project, is play with the idea of feminine and masculine. And we know men played women's roles in Shakespeare days. Klingon women have always been strong characters, and your Othello project is not gender kind of regulated. And Rob Jackson from the fan group says he loves your incredibly strong role as a woman. And we see Laurel in power. We see her as a heartbroken lover, and we see her as a mother. Which really, how did your creative approach to playing the strength of a Klingon, but also the feminine and masculine sides of that? Because like you said, there is, if Laurel didn't have that kind of gentle and, the heartbreak that she had, with her relationship, then the audience would just keep her as the villain, and we would connect like we did so much. And I was astounded that I connected so well with the character and felt this kind of protective love. And it's because of, and I don't say feminine because being the female, I use it as more of like the emotion and the more feeling part of that. What was your creative process in kind of balancing masculine and feminine?
I'm so grateful that this is part of our conversation, because it is something that I feel has always been a part of my journey, and I'm just getting more and more vocabulary for it every day. It is another thing that we are talking about more and more. Just that the gender binary doesn't serve any of us, because it is limiting, and just kind of innately been like, I'm a woman and I have a lot of masculinity, or I think even the terms, it's like we're expanding so beyond that. And Laurel, I agree, is such an incredible opportunity to explore a non-binary existence, because she does not fit human standards of female. If we are going to go more towards like what our little cookie cutter idea of like, what is it to be a woman? Her obviously a Klingon face, albeit in some proximity to mine, does not, have the same look that we might associate with classic beauty. And it's been really interesting. I joked a little earlier about people judging Klingons on human standards, but it's amazing to see, whether it be online or at a convention, and certainly when people meet me and see that I look very different from her, often the inclination is like, why did they make you so ugly? Or like, why did you do that? And I'm like, that's so interesting that you're labeling it as ugly, because I don't see her that way at all. I see her as beyond any definition of beauty. She is energy, she is force. And then you see that within her society, she doesn't see herself as powerful at all until she has to be. And the fact that, she gets that kind of journey as well, which I very much relate to. Like I said, 6 feet tall, big features. People assume that I am confident in my power often. And I have become more confident, but I think it's very important that we see that someone who is empowered is also vulnerable. And I think we are more inclined in certain ways, in certain male protagonists. I mean, I often talk about, I do have a deep love for Kylo Ren from the new Star Wars.
Well, hello, Adam Driver. Hello.
Yeah. I mean, come on. But I joke that I both love the character and that type of archetype. Again, the character who lives in the gray, who makes some wrong decisions, who has an anger inside of them that they think is wrong and thus think that they are bad. As, again, the good bad binary serves none of us. And, but I've always said, I want to be a female Kylo Ren, which I feel like I was in many ways with Laurel. Certainly it's like, okay, that was great. How do we keep perpetuating that? Because there's something about someone like Adam Driver that we love to see him play these roles that do not so great things or are kind of despicable or whatever it is, but we're rooting for them. Why am I rooting for them? You know,
And even him as a leading man, he's not, the typical leading man, but he's Hollywood's new kind of leading man, where he emotes, he cries, and so that's a perfect example.
Yeah, and I want to be a champion of more women getting that opportunity, and in respect to what he does, because I do respect what he does, and I love his craft, and I love watching him. So it's not saying like move aside. It's like, let's make sure that we're affording women that same opportunity, that when they don't look conventional in the way that you're used to seeing a woman. And I love a good sexy vamp sort of trope. I love my dark, obviously, but I think it's about playing with that archetype, and then exploring the depth of it and saying like, okay, so you think what this type of woman is. You think she's a manipulative sociopath, but she's actually just complicated. And I do want to shout out also Bespoke Plays is a group that I've been a part of. I did this reading last year, Analog by Christine Boylan, who's an incredible writer, has written a lot for a TV and an incredible playwright. Love Shakespeare. That's how we first bonded. And but her play is very much that it subverts the kind of AI trope. I'm the engineer who created this sex robot, who helped create this thing, and it's pretty fantastic. And there will be an audio recording that comes out hopefully in October. And I'm really excited for people to hear this story more, because you hear it, and Hyacinth, my character, depending on your life experience, it's a litmus test for how you feel about women. Or like, do you think that she's manipulative? Do you think that she's just doing what she's doing because of her society? And I love characters that ask that question. Yep. And I do believe, when I say I'm a feminist, I believe that like you were saying, it's not about male, female, it's about femininity, masculinity, our energy. How can we all exist in that? Because the more that we celebrate it for all of us, we're just going to be happier, because no one should be limited by a box and that tells them, oh no, you're only allowed to behave this way because of that.
Well, and I totally agree with that. Our current political and social climate right now is just all over the place. And, I'm a member of the LGBT community. And I think even members of our community can be so angrily attached to the right labels, the right terms, and certain boxes, which, yes, it can help, it can help somebody who's not familiar with our community kind of see where we fit in things or kind of automatically associate stuff, but we shouldn't just stick to that, because that's very damaging. And there's no exploration. There's no way to build. If we're each in our own boxes, there's no way to experience new things or kind of have new insight. So I totally agree with that. And even my experience with discovering, talking about looks and putting things in boxes, I'm an OG Star Trek, like original movies. That's where I'm at. And then when the look of the Klingons happened in episode 1 of Discovery, people were like, what the hell? Who are these people? Because it was so drastically different. But then we look back and we see the Klingons in the original series look nothing like the Klingons in the movies, and how the idea kind of transpired. And one of the fans in one of the rooms says, we have looked at our own culture here on this planet. Each of the cultures looks totally different from the other, like you said earlier, with the dialects, even with the skin tone. And so it's like, what are we really, the Klingons are this whole race. We're putting our own prejudice and stereotypes onto, a fictional character, so to speak, in this whole race that has evolved. And I know in your research, you kind of saw every Klingon related anything from any of the franchises. What was your take when they presented, hey, this is what L'Rell's going to look like? What was your first reaction?
Oh my gosh, it's a good question. It's been so long since that first moment. I mean, I remember being super excited. I'm also a big Alien and Aliens fan, and that was, there was a lot of Geiger inspiration there.
Yes.
So I was like, oh, it's like I get to be Ripley and the alien.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Maybe there's a crossover there.
Yeah, there's a crossover.
She had an alien baby.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, who knows? Long lost. And it is, and my Ripley obsession too. The group that's doing Heartbeats, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Their name is Ripley Improv, and when I heard that, I was like, I think we'll be friends. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I remember I think initially I saw like a mold carving. I'm sure there are actual terms that they use, but it was it wasn't a sketch. It was someone had actually, but it was the ridges, and it was, my face with ridges and seeing the whole, in the back, sensory stuff. So that was exciting, and just, oh my gosh, what is this going to be? And then it wasn't until a few months later that we were in rehearsal that January, and we had a camera test. So the next time I really saw it, I was in it. And, and there were, we had a camera test because they needed to see how much more they needed to texture and all that sort of stuff. So, it was really interesting to be a part of that process. And I always want to shout out James McKinnon, our prosthetic department head, and Hugo Villasenor, and Rocky Faulkner. There we go. Remember all three last names, who were our core team. They were the American team that came over, and then our Toronto team was amazing too. But the hours that they spend applying and then reapplying and fixing and checking every shot and making sure that we look good for 15, 18-hour days. I just always want to celebrate and acknowledge that, because it's a tremendous amount of work. But I was just getting to know them, it was, days into being there. And, but Juilliard training, mask work, although very important, never call a prosthetic a mask. A mask is a different type of prosthetic that the background characters wear. A prosthetic has multiple parts and is glued. James would want me to tell everyone that. Very important. But the mask work of look at yourself in the mirror and who are you based off of that. And that was very much what I started to do. I'm like, this is what I have. And the thing that I really started finding was this head tilt, both because it was one way to show that I was living, breathing, emoting, responding. And then as it turned out, when I spoke with Neville Page, the creature designer, he was like, yes, I really designed it thinking that the sensors were stronger in the back, or as Spock would say, the sensors were stronger in the back. And so once I found that out, that was like right leading into me being in the jail cell. So all of those jail cell scenes, I'm like, very interesting. But it really helped because there was a serpentine, feline quality, certainly in the first season without the hair at all. And I mean, I think it was just a continued evolution of this is what I have to work with, and the armor, and just trying to yes and all of it, and being like, I don't want the audience to see an actor struggling under here. I want them to see someone that I want them to see a being. I don't want them to think about me at all, which Doug Jones is the first person to acknowledge that his job is to make you not think about him, and yet he's so incredible and everyone should be thinking about him all the time, because he's
but
given
it
his
is
life for
funny.
that.
And him, like you, the performance, you really think of the character.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself, like, oh, it's Mary under there, and I have to remind myself that it's Doug Jones under there, because their characters are so distinct and so well fleshed out. Doug Jones' work, we know, is just amazing, and you guys are probably like, F you, rest of the cast, shows up hours later for your casting call. And it's not fair. Like, Shazad didn't even have to shave or, wash his hair even.
Nope, he did not.
Wash your hair. Now, but I want to know, as an actor, did you feel a sense of loneliness or isolation in becoming Laurel? Because you're in the chair for hours under the makeup, and I know you really can't move or interact when they're doing that really important work. And you can't really move around freely in between takes. The actors are goofing around and they're bouncing around and playing practical jokes or whatnot. And then when you take off the stuff, nobody really recognizes you. How it must be hard to build camaraderie with the cast of all of this. And then you're like, hours after taking off the make, and everybody's gone home or they're already at the bar or whatever. They don't associate you with the character because it is such a difference.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, the theater ensemble aspect of the cast, championed by Sonequa, who I'm so spoiled that she was my first number one, like on a call sheet, because now I'm like, well, come on, this is the best leader ever. But she went out of her way from the get-go to organize these cast game nights and dinners on the weekend. And here she is with a kid and a husband, now 2 kids, but just made sure that everyone felt seen and heard. So that was a huge part of me getting to know people outside of the show initially. And then, of course, once conventions started happening, that was a huge gift. That was when I really got to know most of the cast. And even prosthetic or no, Laurel in the Klingon plot is its own isolated journey. So I had a few, people that I spent a lot of time with, but most of the core crew I wouldn't have gotten to know otherwise. So I'm very grateful for that, that she championed in that. And then we all kind of reverberated from there. You start hanging, and then again, the gift of being included in the first season on so many panels and traveling with the core cast. I mean, such a gift that I had that opportunity. And but to speak to the isolation, because I do like acknowledging that too, because I can easily be like, yeah, it's fine. But it is true. You cannot. I wasn't allowed to really talk or laugh unless I was in a scene. Yeah. And we have these big, like from Frankenstein, like wooden things that you sit on, where I had come second season, I knew what to ask for. I had an ice pack on each wrist, a fan in my face, a fan like in between my boobs, like blowing in my face.
Me too, girl. I have one now.
Yeah, exactly. It works. With that first copper dress, I was like, oh, this works. But I really did over time really learn to ask what I needed. But it is isolating, but I felt catered so well to who Laurel was and how she was feeling, and like whether it be literally isolated in the jail cell for most of the first season, to just her isolation as an outcast, as this woman who worked for Takuvma, who loved the other outcast folk, and then of course once she's chancellor, having to be isolated, and of course all the spoilers therein of things that she's having to reject from her life. I do feel that was the gift, and sure, I could have just been annoyed with it and been like, this isn't fair, I don't get to have fun. But, as I said at the beginning, my goal as an artist is to be of service. And, some people just are like, nope, prosthetics, not going to do it. It's just, I don't like it. And I was like, apparently I have the tolerance and tenacity to do this for now. And if that can allow this character to exist on a new level, if this is an opportunity for me to give what I can, that all of my experiences thus far have culminated for me to be in this moment and be of service to this character and this whole plot line, this Klingon plot line. So that's really what drove me through some of those 18-hour days and all the sweat that's there. But it's important for me to remember that too, because it's easy now too. It's been a while. So I'm like, yeah, no, it's tough. And I'm like, no, those were some pretty tough days.
You were the first one to say today is a good day to die on screen.
Yes.
Which, of course, I love. And I rewatched the season 2 finale last night just to get myself hyped up. What an amazing two-parter finale. I mean, it was just
absolutely
great. So I need to hear a little bit of the Klingon Discovery opera that you've kind of developed behind the scenes. And can I please play a tenor Ferengi, by the way, when it comes to fruition? But I have to hear some of this opera.
Okay, well, I'll give you the first few lines that was, it was developed in Dortmund, Germany by Kenneth Mitchell, Shazad Latif, and observed by VP of Licensing, John Van Sitters. And there are over 30 minutes of footage that may see the light of day. But we just found out Laurel had her garden in the second season. So here I am in my garden. I don't know what to do. Tyler's here on Kronos, and he hasn't got a clue. And then it escalates from there. Coleshaw comes in, he's a jerk. Tyler doesn't know who he is, he can't figure it out. I get annoyed. It's great.
I'm so in love right now. Let's see. Pancho Gomez wants to know if you've been approached by Strange New World.
Oh,
I can't say.
I can't say, but I have no information because I have no information.
Okay. Because
I would love to. I would love to be approached by someone.
Because in the comics, Laurel is working with Spock after Discovery disappears. Can you imagine some kissing scenes with Ethan Peck? Yes, Mama. That is illogical.
What? No, I wouldn't. No, yeah.
Is it weird to develop a character that's going to be appearing at conventions for the rest of time?
Yeah, it's a really surreal experience, and just to see all of the fan art, and yeah, when I'm at conventions and have people create. I mean, I'm looking over. I have a bit of a Laurel shrine. I have weaponry and plaques that people have made, and just Funko Pop custom made of Laurel in the jail suit.
That's
Like
awesome.
the amount of time and energy that the fans put into celebrating these characters is just so humbling and so beautiful. And yeah.
Well, it's beautiful for the fans too. Christopher Fisher says your obsession with everything Klingon and making it right is at a fan level, which adds this realness and this heft to the experience, which I know as a fan I appreciate so much when a Trek actor has that respect for the Trek legacy.
Oh yeah. Hey.
Can you teach me something sassy to say in Klingon?
I'm trying to sassy, because
Like maybe like I don't know, like we're doing like an on the rocks toast, like raise a
Yeah.
glass up your ass or something like that.
I know the
know.
traditional would be kapla,
Kapla.
success. I'm trying to think. I actually do have. You're gonna love that I have this right here. The Klingon way, a warrior's guide
Yeah.
that I haven't marked up at all. I'm trying to what. There are some. I usually go for the more sentimental ones, but well, there's Cursewell, but that's actually hard to say. What he doesn't eat gach. Do we like that one?
Yeah.
Or... he doesn't eat gach. Why don't we try that one? Or conquer what you desire.
Oh, I like that one.
Okay.
I'm gonna say it in West Hollywood on a Friday night.
Okay. So when you want to say it in Klingon, you say, oh my God, Vai de nechborg yechach.
Wait, the neck board, the chalk.
Hey! That was excellent, sir.
Can you imagine?
Yep.
I'll be like the first like sassy gay
Yeah,
Klingon
yeah.
to come around and be like,
Yeah.
"Yabo."
Yeah. Vai de nechborg yechach. Yeah, you get a little bit, you can lean on that yechach, Get a little,
know When Laurel comes back into the story, I think she
Yeah.
needs like a sassy gay chancellor. Like,
Yes.
I totally see that.
I love
we,
that.
we need to talk about Heartbeats. The way it's described, it's a totally improv medical drama. Are you insane? Number one, I wouldn't be able to improv all of these medical things. I would improv like he has the clap. That's all I would say over and over and over. And how are you going to improv like medical surgery?
Yeah.
Like, what is Heartbeats all about? And it's premiering September 25th, by the way.
Yes, and we have our preview night this Friday night on the Ripley Improv Twitch channel. So that's twitch.tv/Ripley Improv. And that will also, I will do my quick summary now, and we will expound upon that. And in fact, if everyone is inclined, I'm going to hop on Instagram Live and talk with our director,
that's right.
Star, after this. So,
Yes.
so I'll give full details, but this is a great, segue. But the flavor I will give everyone is I came into this actually through Star Trek because Impro has a show, the Improvised Generation, which is in the style of the Next Generation, and so that's how I met them. And then a lot of those actors are part of Ripley Improv, and so Jessica Lynn Verdi, who this is her brainchild specifically to do a medical drama. They've done Dystopia, they've done a glam in the style of Glow. She is a big Grey's Anatomy fan, and she always felt that the structure is so clear in that type of show, like with TIG, that you have the patient, you have the A and B plot, and we do have you have a general sense of a beat sheet. Like, what's interesting about genre improv is you study the genre, you watch the episodes, you say, well, what is the through line? What is this, how many plots are there? What are the characters usually like? Where is the humor? Where's the romance? And so the whole cast has taken the time over the past few months to watch the episodes, talk about them, them, talk about what makes these characters tick. They've all created characters, either doctors, nurses. We have one HR, Laurie, who's part of, and it's one of the most delightful characters. Who's just
That
the
seems
most
like it'd be a
hilarious person.
fun character.
Yeah. And we have kind of the woman who runs the hospital. And what we decided to do, and this was Jessica, and then I've come on board to support in a lot of ways, is that it's a cardiologist wing. So specifically, it will always have to do with the heartbeats. And that way we have a little bit more of a focus on what the actors, improvisers can be looking at when it comes to terminology. And then we will be having every week through the Ripley Improv and the Heartbeats _TV Twitter, a poll on that the audience gets to vote on a theme that will then inform the actual diagnosis that the patient will have that week.
I love it. It's like a choose your own adventure almost.
Absolutely. And the great thing about Twitch is that you have this chat component. And so you sign on, and if you follow and like and all that stuff, we have a theme suggestion at the beginning. There will be moments during the act breaks where the audience gets to say, I want to see these two people together, or like, oh, I hope these people, their sparks are flying. And we have a new guest star every week, which I'm the first.
You're the first.
We have a great lineup of great mixture of improvisers and other actors. But the thing that I am perpetually impressed with, and I've been in class now for a year and a half, so I have a little bit more of the vocabulary, but you literally do within the scene, you don't know what your scene partner has in mind, and you have to be present, you have to listen, you have to, you have hits, which we as a term we use, where, oh, this is a good moment to be like, I know you slept with my brother, whatever it is. And then your partner either has to, yes and it by saying yes or no. Like, that's the nuance of it, is the complexities of these stories that we see on TV are that it's not just everyone being like, yep, you're right. So how do you create conflict in a productive way? How do you create a tension that will pay off later on? A phrase that one of our teachers uses is you're walking backwards into the future. Because
that's very
normally,
like Merlin-esque.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because usually when you're writing a story, you already have a sense of, oh, it's going to end here.
Yeah.
But in this case, you're planting seeds that then as a collective ensemble, you have to be like, oh, okay, so he said that thing about that. Now that we're in the third act, we've got to have that pay off. So somebody has to bring it up. And, it's a lot of incredible ensemble work. And I find it really fun in the Zoom and Twitch space, because we're using green screens. We're having these great stock images of hospitals.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Embracing.
I am so excited.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited too. It's been really fun seeing it come together, and the cast is so incredible. It's a lot of the core Ripley ensemble, plus we have some new men and women. And it's just a really awesome group. And every week it will be an arc of 8 episodes for like first half of the season. So every week we'll have a recap. And the hope, and Jessica's real passion about it, is she wants it to be something that everyone can engage with during this time, that's fun, that it's an escape, you can feel active. It's goofy, but there are serious moments. The beauty of long form improv is that you can have that quiet moment. You can have that emotional beat and be like, oh, you are the love of my life, or whatever it is, and let it be real. And I really appreciate that element of the training that I'm getting right now with improv, is don't just try and be goofy and funny. Those moments will happen, but they will happen if you're being present and real.
Well, and I'm such a huge fan of like the Christopher Guest films,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some real poignant emotional moments in that. And like we had talked earlier before, even drama needs the moments of comedy, and vice versa. Okay, I know you have to go, but Operation Othello, it's also tweaking on Shakespeare, it's tweaking on media, it's tweaking on acting. Miss Viola Davis, my girl, is involved. Something you've written, produced, and you star as Iago in. This is a big project for you.
Yes, it's been a huge endeavor. I mean, it came out of, I had fallen in love with the play when I did it originally for Harlem Shakespeare Festival, and Serendipity Highway. My mom and I happened to be at the premiere of All the Way that Robert Schinken, who was her Ensemble Studio Theater in LA friend from 30 years back, who had written it. So again, all that. We happen to be
Everything
there.
circles around, especially in this business. Don't
Truly.
burn bridges because
Yeah,
it'll come back.
yeah, exactly. And we were there, and Julius and Kaylin Hunt, who's the VP of Juvie Productions, they were there, and Viola's a Juilliard alum as well. And actually, my parents had been in an event that fall when I was doing it, and they were chatting, and they mentioned I was doing it. Julius had said that he had played the role 3 times, and they had a great discussion about the play. So then we see each other again. I talk about my experience. And I was like, yeah, I'd really love to do a contemporary version where Iago is legitimately a woman. And because that was a huge thing that, again, coming back to all these gender norms and expectations, when I was playing Iago as a man, I mean, he was, we did it traditionally as if it were like Shakespeare did with all men playing.
Right.
And what I found was he was swashbuckling, as you say in that one picture. Yeah. He was like a Jack Sparrow. Yes. And I was like, why do we love Jack Sparrow? And it's different from Kylo Ren, but it's still this thing of like, why do we love the men we can't trust? Why do we love this guy who shoots from the hip? Why do they call him Honest Iago? Not because he's pure. Like my association as a woman had been, I have to be like Desdemona to be honest. I have to be, angelic. And I was like, oh, that is a gender bias. That is, the sweatier I got, the more sexy I got in this role. So I was like, what does that look like on a woman? This woman who's ingratiated herself in this male-dominated world in the military, and then gets passed over for a promotion by a young white guy who, just graduated from school. And this guy was supposed to be her ally, So these were the kind of seeds. And Julius, to his glorious credit, he's an incredible producer and champion, and as is Viola. And their Juvie is the real deal. They're about the real work. And he said, this sounds like a great concept. You should write it.
Okay.
And I went home and did this whole adaptation using the original text, cutting it down. And I had very clear ideas of where I wanted to cut down because I'd been doing a very, very uncut version for a few weeks. Did this cut. The VR thing kind of also Serendipity Highway came up a few months into the conversation. And then we went on this kind of year and a half meeting different VR companies in LA and learning about the medium and accessibility, education, all of this stuff. We ended up, doing this proof of concept pilot with Oculus and Here Be Dragons. Here Be Dragons no longer exists as Here Be Dragons, but they were the VR company that we worked with. And we got to go to Cannes, and then I got to represent at Rain Dance Festival last September, a year ago. That's wild.
Wow,
that is a lot for me to process right now. But it was incredible, and I got to do PowerPoint presentation talking about all these sorts of things, and it's just the beginning. I really feel that with this project because the technology changes so quickly, and that's the beauty of it, is that we're what it's capable of. But I'm proud of what we discovered, what we could do with the VR space. And I hope that, the next steps will be, coming back to the piece as a whole, because outside of it just being technologically advanced, I keep likening it to Into the Spider-Verse, how it was progressive both in it did with technology, but also the story and who was being represented in the story. And
You have to come back, and we have to talk more about it when it hits its next. I know you have to go, so just real fast. Rapid fire. Biggest pet peeve while working on set?
Not being able to pee easily.
Strangest thing you've bought online during COVID?
I've bought many things, and I can't think of. Oh my gosh, a purple cushion? Not that strange.
Okay,
It's a special back cushion.
Shakespeare writes a play about the life of Mary Chieffo. What's the opening line?
Were I as powerful as the men I know.
Okay. No, okay. It's snappy. That's where to go. Okay, your mom, Beth Grant, guest stars on Star Trek. What role would you give her? What kind of role would you give her?
Oh, out of respect for her lack of pleasure in prosthetics, I would give her, but I'd still want her to be maybe Vulcan. Oh, yeah. I like see her as a Vulcan. That's interesting.
She's got the cheekbones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like a Vulcan elder who's like very.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, tell our audience where you want them to find you and follow you and love you.
Okay, great. I am Mary the Chief. A little play on my name. And I am on Twitter and Instagram with that handle. I am on Facebook, not very actively, but I am very active on Twitter and Instagram. And yes, if you want to follow me right now, I'll be hopping onto Instagram Live shortly to talk more deets about Heartbeats.
Yes, I love it. And I know that we kept you right up to the last minute because I know you're going live right
all
now.
good.
Thank you so much. I cannot wait for you to come into the studio
Yes.
once all this is over and we can chat more about Othello and we can chat more about theater.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not upset that we kept talking. We could talk for another 5 hours. So
I
thank
still have
you.
pages and pages. Thank you to all of the Star Trek fans that sent in your questions. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them. A huge thank you to Kurt, our engineer. Thank you to Mama Rose, our researcher, and Mary. I'm in love. And watching the season finale of season 2, I just have to watch the whole season all over again. And I know Laurel will be back. Who knows? Strange New Worlds or season 4 of Discovery. Now there's a little baby running around.
Yeah, there's got to be something.
Yep,
I'm definitely, I have lots of hope for the future, both for our actual one and the one that's being created on screen.
One of the fans says that he has a fan dream that Laurel's ship, cloaked, followed Discovery into the wormhole. So,
Oh my God, I love that. I love that idea.
maybe she stops for snacks. We don't know. All right, Mary, I know you have to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Katlo, as we say in Klingon. Katlo.
Yes. And that's all, folks. It's always a grab bag of fun every weekend on The Rocks. Coming up, we have Danielle Staub from Real Housewives of New Jersey is coming back, and we have actor Michael Urie. So keep tuning in. Thank you again to everybody. Go to ontherocksradioshow.com and binge watch us. Stay happy, stay healthy, and stay tipsy. This has been another episode of On the Rocks. Tweet me and slide into my DMs on Twitter and Instagram at On the Rocks On Air. Find everything On the Rocks for free at ontherocksradioshow.com. Subscribe, like, review, and share. Until next week, stay fabulous.